Well, hello, hello. We're back again for another Other Ink Thursday, and this time I'm joined by Kodi Gonzaga, who is a creator, a writer, a TTRPG developer, and also the convention coordinator for the Indie Game Developer Network, which is how I met them. And we are going to talk about all of that, all of that. Hey, Cody, welcome.
Hi. Hello. Great to be here.
I really appreciate you setting aside some time for this and talking about it. I mean, this is sort of like a series of like talking to all the like new leadership team, but also like uh I just you're a creator that has some you're doing like a game about psychic people that I'm gonna ask about a little bit, and I have also published a game about psychic kids, and so I think talking about that and the ways in which you present that in role-playing games is something interesting. But before all of that, a new question that I have started to ask people is like, okay, like as kids are going to play games with like blocks and like scraps of paper and whatever else. But like, what is your first like time that you remember noticing that like games are like a thing that is like a discrete, like it comes in a box and here's the pieces, or it's in this book and it comes with these dice. Like, what was the first one that was like, oh, a game, as opposed to like I'm playing with a ball and mud or whatever.
Oh my gosh. The first game I remember playing, or like that was like
Or
a
that
that
made
I
a
felt
real
like was a
impact,
dis.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. Like I think the first game I can really think of as being a distinct game that I played is honestly Jax.
Hmm.
Like, I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
got
I have a
rules.
mem it does, and I have a memory of playing it. It's either that or Foursquare, if you know what that
Yeah,
is.
yeah. I
Okay,
played
all right.
a lot of Foursquare in
I
elementary
did
school.
too. I did too.
I,
Um,
we had a like in front of the school there was like the all the concrete was divided into squares, so you could play
yeah.
6 or 8 square also depending on how many
Oh,
players you had at recess.
yeah. No, we had a perfect like right in like the shadow of the middle school
Mm,
building. There was a perfect 4x4. And so people would just play Foursquare back there. We also
yeah.
played wall ball, but like elementary school, I remember playing jacks. I remember uh Monopoly I did not play until I was older. Um, but yeah, it
Ha-
was I think it might have been those like little pickup little
Yeah.
trinket games.
Yeah. Like how does that like happen? And this is sort of like distracting. This is sort of like a rabbit trail, but like I kind of am curious, like what is the did you see somebody playing it and you're like, "Ooh, what is this?" Or is it almost
I on
I
I
almost
don't
imagine
remember.
like a dumb
Yeah.
sort of situation where like, hey, you would play jacks with me, and like somebody's like has the set that they got at like the drugstore or whatever, that a little
hmm
plastic bag that has the things that because it is so weird to think about like how do you even start with those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't remember. I feel like the first Jax set I encountered was one on the playground in elementary school. And then I probably asked my parents about it and they probably had a Jax
Mm,
set. And then I started, you know, another one. Oh, another game I probably played really young is Go Fish, which
yeah.
I hate that game now. Burn it with fire.
It
But
it's a
yeah.
cl yeah. It's funny that you say that. I won't blow up their spot, but there's I was at again, I told you right before we started recording, I was at Gamma Expo this past week at the time of the recording, and somebody had like a Go Fish version that they were like, it's like a Go Fish mechanic, and it was resource shopping around, and like once you'd revealed that you had
Oh.
different things, then you were vulnerable because they could steal it from you and stuff like that.
That's
And
actually really cool as like a resource mechanic in a TTRPG because it's you can have story elements on top of that, but yeah,
yeah.
Go Fish
Yeah.
is brutal.
Yeah. Uh, but it's like I guess the vulnerability though is like the once you someone has stolen a card from you, then you know they have it. So then you know they've got double. It can comes back. It goes around. What goes around comes around, or can.
Hmm.
Anyway, yeah, and that's one that's like one of those you can't copyright game mechanics. So like every company makes little sets of Go Fish. Anyway. All right, we this road. I don't know where this road was going, so I'm gonna back up and turn around. So talking about that, like what playing games and then like being to the point where you're making games is there's like a shift. So like again, I think like thinking about very early childhood, like kids will make up their own games. You said wall ball. I don't know what that is, but I imagine it's a lot of throwing the ball against the wall and it bounced
Yep,
back and you
you
catch
got
it,
it.
you know. But like again, like that sort of idea about like not just that I can play a game here, but that I can create something, right? Either I can
Hmm.
publish a story or I can design a game and put it on itch.io. I mean, that feels like very further down the line that like I mean, I have no idea. Are teens using itch.io? I feel like I'm an old man sometimes. But like where is that you're like, oh no, there aren't just games I can play. I can make games or I can make things. Like where did that come from for you?
Oh gosh. So the idea of making my own games definitely started a lot more recently, like within the last 6 or 7 years, which, I say recently. Um, I'm
The world
an
is
adult.
like a billion years old, so it's
Yeah,
very
it's
recent, very
fine.
recent.
I say that because I'm in my like late 20s and I started writing stories when I was 9 years old.
Yeah,
So to me, 6 to 7 years ago, starting to develop games, that's a recent development to me creatively because I've wanted to be a creative since I was very little. Um, but like designing games specifically, I think I started with a space western PBTA game that will never see the light of day because it was bad. I based it off Monster of the Week, which I now realize is not the best PBTA system. I love it. However, it's not good PBTA. I'll die on this hill. And so like I started with that and then I've been slowly like I started playing Pathfinder in ninth grade. Hated it, but loved the storytelling.
sure.
Learned about D&D in college. Learned about PBTA, Monster of the Week, Apocalypse World, all that in college. Learned about even more indie story games, which is now what I'm currently into after that. And so like
I mean, that's the usual
I
path line, like the more
yeah.
broad things leading to the indie stuff, the biggest indie stuff, and then the most obscure indie stuff comes after. That's the
Now
usual path
I'm
line.
yeah, now I'm just on itch looking at tiny little one pagers and like little and it's great.
Oh, there's so many
Yeah,
good ones.
there's so many good ones. And like I think it was I'd been reading chapter books and stuff when I was growing up,
Hmm.
and very soon after I started reading chapter books, I had the realization I could write these or I could tell these stories, I could make
Yeah.
these stories. And so that happened again when I started like I was the first Pathfinder campaign I was in was a homebrew. I started playing D&D and I was like, what if I made a D&D class? I did not get more further than the thought.
Well,
And then I was like, I'm gonna make a game. And so it's like, I don't know.
no, I love everything you're saying because I think it's so true that like some people are just kind of wired to create with the things. Like I feel like it's a game really when I read a game and I want to make a character in that world, that's a good sign for the game. But like when I want to like stat out a city or like make my own magic spell or something like that after I've read a game, then I'm like, oh no, this one really got to me because I want to. It's like an expression it's an expression of like enjoying the content and like wanting to make more of it is sort of a that's how like I said, often judge myself about whether or not I've really enjoyed something. Is like I'm ready to create more of it. Um, and so I think a similar thing that you're talking about, where it's like, oh, I can do this. I can make more of this. I want the idea that, first of all, I love sci-fi Western. It's a one of my favorite things to explore. So, you know, maybe find another way to do a sci-fi Western.
Already on it.
Yeah,
I have
great,
10 billion projects on the back burner. One of them
sure,
is that, but in a slightly different system. It's
sure,
already back.
great, love it. Look forward to it. But you know, the idea that you can know what as soon as you learn what PBTA is, then you were like, great, I can hack it. Great, I can do it. Like, let me start writing it. You know, like that closeness of that. And so it is great. It's just sort of it's the joy of creation. It's the joy of participating in this thing. I love that. And um, I think it takes that kind of a person to like stick with it sometimes and to like make games because they're not always easy. I mean, it's let me say that different. It's relatively easy to make a game the same way it's relatively easy to sit down and write a story or whatever. But like, there's a lot more hurdles to put it out there for other people to access it, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so that's one thing that I wanted to ask you about. You're talking about writing stories as young as grade school and stuff like that, being pretty young. Like, was there venue, like was it just you had notebooks and they were in your bedroom and maybe you read them to a parent or something like that, or was it you had a teacher who was editing a like school newspaper and encouraged you to submit? Like, were you able to, because publishing in the broadest sense, right? Publishing as in like getting
Hmm.
it out there to other people. Like, what did you have early experiences of that as well?
Most of my experiences with like getting my stories out there, my first memories of like telling stories are telling stories to myself on the floor of my bedroom with like one of those like Richard Scarry's diagrams of
Mm,
like the house, of the beach, like books in front of me,
yeah.
and just flipping to the page I thought was most applicable and just spinning a story based on like the movie I had most recently
Well,
watched.
those
Um,
books, they have everybody's name in there and they have like, you know what all
yeah.
the items are and like, you know,
It was very good for like little me because it was also like a source of inspiration because I'd be like, oh, I don't know what happens next. I'd look at the page and be like, This thing happens with the eggs. I don't know because I was in the kitchen page or
yeah.
something." Like, and I by the time I was like 9 or 10, I had a whole setup. I had like my notes in my notebooks that I would write
Mm.
in. I had a sound machine I'd stolen from my baby brother's bedroom to put on ambiance. Like it was a whole deal. But yeah, like
This is the like what's
yeah.
the lo-fi girl, lo-fi study
Sure. Oh
girl,
no,
like
worse. Just but it's just me by myself in my room telling nonsense stories. Yeah. But no, most of the stories that like I got to share with others were like school projects and things like that. I think I'm second or third or fourth grade, one of those three. Um, we were supposed to write like a little historical fiction. Like we
mm,
learned what historical fiction was, and or something like that. And we were supposed to write a little story that involved something from history. So I wrote about George Washington crossing the Delaware, except
hmm.
a time traveling baby brontosaurus named Bronte was also there.
Great.
And could talk and
Yeah.
was and like and my teacher was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever, and I'm like, okay. I'm 7, and so
I
like,
just
you
I
know,
just put a dinosaur into a story. That's all I did.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, yeah, a lot of the stories I would tell by myself in my room were me just injecting myself into the stories that I would watch or read. A lot
what
of
if
watching
I was at
actually,
the
but yeah.
beach with the fox people and the
Yeah. Like
pig family?
what if I was a superhero next to Captain
Mm,
America? Marvel movies were big when I was in middle school, I think.
yeah.
Elementary school, middle school, high school. It's just that Marvel was big in my childhood. So that was a inspiration for me for better or for worse.
Yeah. I mean, it was comics, obviously, that a lot of Marvel comics when I was younger,
Yeah.
for sure. So yeah, I mean, those are stories, and they're yeah. I don't know. There's no end to that like statement, I guess. It's just, yeah, like seeing stories and being part of them, and that's I think that's almost like what I'm thinking about is like the sort of character, right? Like so many
Hmm.
RPGs, there are some RPGs now where you like you're going to play your character is like a society or you're playing the environment, but like the vast majority of RPGs have you play like a character. Um, Even if it's yourself, you are in the haunted house or whatever. So that's I don't know if that's what you felt that it's different, but like I think there was a lot. It's interesting to hear you say that that's like a thing that you did very early is putting yourself into these contexts. Because I suppose like a lot of people do, they write the quote unquote self-insert character that like, you know, but there is that little bit of I don't the I forget the word for it, but like there's this little bit of separation, right? You change your
Yeah,
name
yeah.
and it's some other person who is very much like you, but isn't you. But then if it really was you that you were putting in there, I think that sort of leads you to the theater kid track, the art and then the
I
RPG
was a
track.
theater kid.
Yeah.
Um, I was a theater kid in high school. I was not in college though, but I very much was a theater kid in high school. So it
Yeah.
definitely led me down that track for a bit.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who end up in RPGs have spent time in theater. It's not universal. It's not universal, but it's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, so I want to ask you about like some of the things that you've done. I was looking around again at the games you've done. You have like How to Be a Goblin or what's it called?
Goblin Simulator. That's
Goblin
ones I made
Simulator.
that for a little 24 word RPG. I was just like,
Right.
I'm gonna have fun.
It,
Um,
right. 24 word. That is such an ambitious how could you put creativity into 24 words? Or it's a the constraint, it's a very strong constraint. Like constraint breeds creativity. It's a very well-known fact. But 24 words is a very extreme
oh
constraint.
yeah, it's not a lot.
Um, but what are some of the other projects that you've worked on before now? Like what's some of the stuff that you've gotten published or put out there? I know you've got an itch page because again, I was looking at
Yeah.
your
I
website.
mean,
So like,
it's literally just what's up on the itch page right now. Like, I don't have anything like physically produced. I don't have anything beyond what's up on itch. It's just like, Down the Road Through the End of the World, which is my journey through a post-apocalyptic world RPG that
yeah.
uses the other kind dice system. That's like the first big one, and then the second big one right now is Voxin, a Firebrand's hack, which is based on the Firebrand's framework, and it's just your oppressed superhumans dealing with megacity politics and also getting into messy relationships. And it's like those are the two ones that I like charge more than $2 for.
Yeah.
And then like the other ones I have are smaller ones. I have a Descended from the Queen game about following the Chosen One. I have a Badger and Coyote hack called Golden and Rascal about being siblings in a shitty situation. And like, um, I have a one pager called Bitty Folk Adventures about being an itty bitty person in a big scary world. And it's just, it's just fun, quippy table one-liners and stuff like that. Um,
Uh,
yeah.
I I want to maybe ask about some of those in particular, but I like a lot of the ones that you have. There has like I'm going to propose some focuses that maybe you're interested in, right? There's a lot of like Americana sort of scenes and landscapes, and I identify strongly as a Midwesterner. I was born in Michigan. I've lived most of my life in what we jokingly hear in Louisville call the Upper South, in Louisville, Kentucky. But it's like I'm right up beside Ohio, right beside Indiana, so very much a Midwestern kind of vibe. But that kind of like road trips and roadside attractions and like, oh, it's only 4 hours to this city. We'll just go for the day, those kind of things that like I don't know that anyway, that's very Americana, right? All of those sort of things. And
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
picking up on some of those same sort of vibes in your games, especially the Apocalypse one.
Oh, for sure.
And
Yeah.
then, you've got like centering the outsiders or the people who have been otherized in some way. You put those in
Oh,
the
yeah.
center of things. So like that's a very I don't I'm sure you know this already. I'm not telling you, I'm not revealing mysteries to yourself. So like why are you drawn to some of those things like over and over again? Like the powers and otherized for powers and those why is that a theme that's resonates with you?
Oh, gosh. I mean, Americana, it's actually interesting. I grew up in like the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. So I consider
Okay.
myself Southern raised, but I also like there was a I don't I wasn't like country Southern.
Yeah.
And so like and now I live in California and um I went to college in Connecticut and like
All
family
right.
lived all up around the East Coast and stuff like that. Like I never actually went much to the Midwest. I
Yeah.
never went much into the like Rocky Mountains or anything. The Appalachians, yes. But like I think road trips, I I didn't go on a lot of road trips as a kid. Or like I did, but they were few and far between. And I often threw up on most of them because I have motion sickness. But they were still like fo some of my fondest memories was like road tripping.
Yeah.
And like, I also grew up watching like the one that comes to mind is unfortunately Supernatural, which is a very Americana road
Oh,
trip
abs-
vibe sort of TV show. That influenced me a
absolutely.
lot in middle
That's
school.
so much driving in that show.
It's so much. They're in that Impala for so long.
Yeah, that's
Anyway,
it takes a long time to I mean, you have
they
to know
gotta
it.
they have to like drive everywhere across the country. It's
Some of those
crazy.
those states are real big, some of them.
They are. No, I don't think people realize how big some of the states are. Um, but yeah,
I
like,
We drove
gosh.
one time from Florida to California and it took four
Oh
days,
no.
but like we crossed into it took most of 2 days just to drive across Texas because it's
Yeah,
it's a big state when you go
you're going
across
long
it.
ways across it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of big states. Yeah,
Yeah.
Montana, big state. All of them,
Oof.
Colorado, Wyoming, they're all big states.
They're big
This,
squares.
yeah,
Yeah. But the othering, like the being othered, I mean, little demographic information about yours truly. I am non-binary, mixed race, uh born female. Uh let's see what else. I mentioned mixed race. Like neurodivergent in a bunch of ways. Like I probably have some kind of physical disability that's like mildly invisible, but still makes my joints hurt.
mm,
And like I'm in my early 20s, which is great to have one of those. But it's like there are so many ways in which I, as a person, just am not in the center of a lot of stories. And I think when I was telling stories to myself and injecting myself, a lot of that was because I couldn't see myself in those stories and I
mm,
wanted to see myself in them. Um, and then like the element of superpowers or like special abilities that like also make you stick out of the norm. They don't make you necessarily a hero, or they can, but not unless you earn it. At first, they like ostracize you for your powers. That felt to me like a way, maybe it was like a way to externalize my feelings around being an other in our society. Like
mm,
I mean, psychology is whatever it is, but I mean, I've always felt really drawn to stories about kids with powers who are othered because of those powers and also because of other things. Like
yeah,
Percy Jackson was one of my first loves as a kid, like one of the first books I read that I loved. And I also loved the Kane Chronicles for all their faults, which is another Rick Riordan series about Egyptian myth instead of Greek myth.
yeah.
And like I just like I think part of what drew me to TTRPGs is shh, sorry, that's my cat. Shh,
It's
quiet,
fine.
Zoe.
Cats
A part of
exist
what
and they want to be part of the
they
conversation. It's fine.
she loves talking. She is very vocal. I think a part of what drew me to TTRPGs is that I could be in like my favorite movie. Like I grew up watching
Mm.
Lord of the Rings. I grew up watching Star Trek and Star Wars and Indiana Jones. I was like, I could be in my favorite movies as myself in these games. And like, I think that's part of I was like, oh, I don't have to be a generic action hero. I can just be me with an Indiana Jones hat on,
Yeah.
fighting zombies or whatever we were
Yeah.
doing. Like it's so much of my storytelling and game designing and creative experience has been trying to like almost prove to myself that I can exist
Mm.
in modern media
Yeah.
because I don't know if I can't see myself in so much, or I can see myself in a lot more of it nowadays. But even still, like growing up, I didn't see myself in it. And part of that was because we didn't have a lot of reach in what we watched in my household, but also we only watched like the mainstream stuff anyway. So it was, I don't know. I and then, who doesn't want to have superpowers? Even if they
Sure.
make you an outsider, they're gonna make you who you are too. So
Yeah.
having powers is fun.
Well, I mean, we could dig into this a little bit more, and maybe we should, but I appreciate you being so honest with yourself in this interview so far. It is you mentioned the Super Marvel superheroes, and I said X-Men, and like that's the classic sort of like
Yes.
oh, they're hated by the society, but still are there to defend. I'm going to use my steel skin to smash the robots and save the mall of, the falling
Oh yeah,
elevator will be
X-Men. I
saved.
definitely
It's,
imprinted on X-Men as a kid. Like
uh, I mean, some people want to say that that's not what it's always been about, but like since the 60s, it was like these comics came out in the 60s. It was a rebus
it was
for all of
about the
that.
civil rights
Right. It was
movement
about the civil rights
when it
movement from
first
day one.
came out.
So if you, yeah, um, it, so it's a classic sort of method of storytelling, but then like, it's Stan Lee and Steve Ditko who are like two white guys who are making this stuff. I think there's a lot of Jewish people involved in early comics, especially and stuff like that. But like, so there is a little bit of that outsiderness, but it's not. It's great to have a greater breadth of creators telling these kinds of stories than in the 60s. Uh, so I think what I also want to ask you about is like you mentioned a lot of your designs being sort of like in the sort of SRD tradition, right? So you've got you used and everybody's got these fun names, right? So like you've got a game called For the Queen, and then which is if I correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because it's a prompt-based storytelling game, and it's
Hmm.
by Alex Roberts, right?
Hmm.
And so it's prompt, and that's there's no dice that resolve things. It's all like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. So then there's been a ton of people that have made a game like that, and they call it Descended from the Queen, and there's this thing. And I know you mentioned some of the other. That's the one that I remember. You mentioned several of these styles of games. So what is what does it offer like to work in a tradition like that where you've got like this is a way this game works, and pick it up and run with it and make your own thing is sort of the almost the point of those kind of not the point, but like it is definitely a feature of those kind of games is that they're very open and free, and there's a community that's formed around them. So there's as opposed to like I'm going to math out my new dice mechanics that no one else has done before that will produce exactly the effect I'm looking for. Like, is it just as simple as like, oh, this rule set already exists, just take it and put my own stuff on it, or is there something that those storytelling rule sets offer that isn't, what
Hmm.
beyond the I mean, obviously you could speak to the ease of developing it, but also like the what other appeals do it have to use sort of quote unquote off the shelf systems like that?
I mean, part of it is I'm a bit of a lazy designer in that I don't like math. So if I have to do math about dice calculations, I am already gone. And so like, having systems with like system reference documents that already exist, that's really helpful to me. But I don't just design in one system because like I'm also little as I like math, I'm very much a like mechanics savvy like like crunch in the like teeniest way possible crunch head. In that like when I am like designing a game for a system, I try to make sure that the game I'm making brings out and matches the system I'm using. So like I started making firebrands. The my firebrands hack, Voxen, which is about the superhumans who are oppressed in
Hmm.
a megacity. I started making that one after reading Stewpot. And Stewpot is great, but it's like based on the firebrands framework. And I was like, but where's the messy entanglements? There aren't any messy entanglements. There also aren't any leading question. Like there are leading questions. But like there's such different leading questions than the very specific tight leading questions in the traditional Firebrands framework. And I was like, I wonder, like, I started wanting to design a Firebrands framework when I read Stewpot. And then I went back and read like The King is Dead and Mobile Frame Zero Firebrands, which were the original two Firebrands frameworks games developed by Megwin Vincent Baker. Um, and then I was like, oh, I understand what the system is trying to do. And then I made Voxen. And so like, and that's a running theme with me is where I'll be like inspired to make something because I read an iteration of it.
Hmm.
And I think it's because I can see what it can be. And then I go back and read the original, like the first, like I'm making a belonging outside belonging game, which is technically a type of powered by the apocalypse game, but I don't have to get into that. But
I want
I
to get into
read
that in just a little bit,
I will
but
we
please
can
go
talk
on.
about it. But I read Wander Home first and I
Mm.
was like, this is so evocative, this is so wonderful, I love it. And then I was like, I'm getting stuck designing my own belonging outside belonging game. So I went back and read Dream Askew and Dream Apart, which were the original BOB games. And then I was like, I understand what's happening. Like it's like I start further down the line and I go and then I'm like, oh, I understand. And then I branch off in my own direction, is what I tend to do with games. Um, but yeah, like
Well, I mean,
it's yeah.
I mean, I think that works with any sort of thing, like what is
Hmm.
I, I, I just happened to glance over here at my shelf and I have a bunch of Peanuts comics collections and like there's all that World War One Snoopy as a war hero or whatever that's in those comics and like if you encounter that in the 80s, like you're like as a kid, like why is this what is happening here? But it's because of the age of the creator when he started making
Hmm.
that stuff in the 50s. That was what he had grown up on was the is World War One stuff. And so anyway, it's like encountering it in media.
Hmm.
It's always a reference to itself, or
Yeah.
that's not a way of saying, but like stuff that you almost never encounter the original first, is what I'm trying to say. You always encounter the iterations on the original, and then you either go off from that directly, and sometimes you do, like you said, you have to go back and find what was the original because every variation changes things a little bit,
Oh yeah.
And I imagine its rule sets are that way, like because especially with the bakers being so prolific in
Oh
their
yeah.
their designs and stuff like that. Like I didn't encounter Apocalypse World first. I encountered somebody who had made a hack of it first, and I was
Yep.
playtesting it, um, and he had read Apocalypse World and loved it and made his own game off of it. And then that was my introduction to PBTA was that, not the original. So I think there's nothing wrong with that, but it is also great to like go back and understand the original.
Yeah. No, for sure. I definitely find a lot of value in like going back to the original, as original as any art is.
Sure, sure.
And like, because I think part of what turned me off from my own PBTA game was reading Apocalypse World and realizing
Mm,
how much more both complicated and like not perfect, but like everything fit together
yeah.
in a way that I like it didn't in Monster of the Week. And then I realized I'm basing my game off of Monster of the Week and not Apocalypse World. And so there are things getting lost in
It's
translation.
it's
Yeah.
I've not ever made a PBTA hack other than like to use the like roll 2d6 and it's the three
It's
levels,
hard.
right? Like
It's so hard. PBTA is
it
one of the most difficult things to design in.
well, I imagine it intimidates me, like because
hmm
it's easy enough to give the three ranks about like failure, big success, full success. You know, that's easy enough to
There's
imagine,
so much happening under the hood.
but then to
So much.
imagine like 10 playbooks that all offer something different and they're each doing very important things in each of those three levels of what every time you roll. Like it's a lot. It's a lot to design and a lot
hmm
to work through. So um yeah, I'm only confirming that like yeah, PBTA is harder than it looks. I think from me having not actually done it, but read several of them and imagined like there's a lot to think about, a lot to work with.
There's so
Um,
much.
yeah. So I did have one other thing that I want to say before we talk about like IGDN, the Indie Game Developer Network. And I really like, and I think I'm gonna maybe what you call like, would you say the tiniest of Crunch fan or whatever
Yeah.
you liked? But I think that is not. It's almost like what I was thinking of when you were saying that was like there's a whole other type of mechanic that is more of this storytelling because it's very easy to come up with games I find it easy to come up with games easily. Like I'm imagining if you have three cards, they're tarot cards or whatever, and they mean whatever they mean, or they're ranked in suits, whatever. You decide whatever their meanings are. But like you get three cards and that's the story, and then like suddenly the mechanic is like, but when do you reveal all three of your cards? Like you could just come in and take over the story real quick, boom, boom, boom. I've added these elements to the story, but then you can't have any more story control of the story because you already put down your cards. Like even that is like there's so it's not crunchy. Suddenly it's like a whole other way of thinking of
Yeah.
crunch is it because there's so much weight
Yeah.
on those choices of when you reveal the card and add that
hmm
element to the story that it is very mechanical in a way because you're waiting
Yeah.
and watching and you're actively listening for the moment when you can add your detail to the story.
Yeah.
It is very
It
in
is,
one
it's
respect it doesn't look
mechanical.
crunchy
Yeah.
in the
But it
traditional
is.
sense of like big numbers, but it's more socially
Yeah.
complex because of how you have to insert the storytelling. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever talked about it that way before, but the way you said it, it's like it's not crunchy. It is crunchy. It's totally crunchy because these things are
It's,
very
yeah.
important about the mechanics and how you interrupt the story and take narrative control. And I mean that goes with PBTA too. Like that's how the whole thing with it is like I'm going to make this move by I'm going to try to take narrative control over this situation, you know.
hmm
And I don't know. I
Yeah.
kind of talked over you there. So back
No,
to you.
no,
What it
it's
was.
okay. It was, I think it's like, there is like narrative crunch. Like,
Mm,
there's crunch in terms of like, oh, I rolled dice and I have to make sure that like when I'm setting up, oh, you're going to roll this dice, I have to make sure the math on the back end, like the probability engine makes sense. But then
hmm
like you also there because we grow up so oversaturated with stories these days,
mm,
all a lot of people have like an instinct for telling stories, but they're not necessarily able to like it's instinct. It's not frontal cortex. It's not, I'm aware of this process. And so like I think that's where growing up telling stories and reading stories and writing stories has been really helpful to me because I can abstract and like frontal cortex the process of narrative, and that really helps me design narrative crunch for
yeah.
my storytelling games. And like that's why I use so many different systems because I'm like each type of system, even if it's just like Firebrand's framework is just prose. It's just like evocative questions and like evocative prompts and stuff like that. Like that's what For the Queen is. Like so much of these are just writing. But like writing is so there are there's it's so much more deliberate than people think. It is just as deliberate as mathematics can be
Mm.
in
I
the
mean,
in especially in game design. And so like I think that I'm drawn to storytelling, so I'm drawn to storytelling games, but like I think my storytelling stuff having been honed since I was 9 years old has really helped me like understand and like conceptualize the idea of game design as like an engine for storytelling. Which like, there is like there's narrative beats, there's pacing, there's like uh, there's all the like in my game that I'm designing now, Extraordinary, I have this thing called challenge, like a challenge scene where you write a number on an index card and you got to put that number of tokens on the index card. But the number doesn't mean that it's a challenge that you're trying to overcome, but the number doesn't indicate how difficult the challenge is. It represents how long you want to stay in the scene.
Mm.
And so like, cause it's all narrative. Cause like, if it were how difficult the challenge was, that would be numbers crunch. It's not numbers crunch, it's storytelling crunch. So it's like, okay, this is like a mini boss. So we should only have like 7 or 8 tokens on this. Okay, this is a big boss. We should have like 10 to 12 tokens to overcome this guy because we want to spend a lot of time in this scene and have a lot of interactions. And so like, and there's so, like, I think storytelling, there's a reason it's like an art that people have to like, there's a reason it's a skill.
Yeah.
And I think like I think it's very important to acknowledge that both kinds of cruncher exist and are important. I just happen to be more comfortable with one. The
Yeah.
math can go away. But yeah.
Uh,
Uh
so you've mentioned Extraordinary, and we said we were going to talk
mhm.
about it at the end, and so maybe but you mentioned it just
Yeah.
now. So, but another teaser, we'll get to it. But we also want to talk about you being part of the Indie Game Developer Network and the leadership team
Hmm.
for the year. This is, I think I don't know if I said this before we started recording, or I think I did. I think we were already recording when I said this is sort of like I talked to the president, and you are the convention coordinator for this term, 2-year term. And uh, first of all, thank you because I have done this job in the past and it is a lot of work. So thank you for being
It
willing.
is.
The number one, you absolutely have the number one qualification, which is being willing to say yes to doing it. Uh, and we're in the thick of like because Gen Con is such a huge event, you have to
Yep.
start planning it 8 months early, which is now. And
Yep.
here we are in the middle of planning Gen Con. So I, I what I I want to give you like I want to ask like what made you want to step out of the leadership team and do the role, and then maybe give you opportunity to talk about like what are some of your goals for the network during the 2 years when you'll be the convention coordinator and kind of being the person who's making decisions, but also like doing just a lot of like probably data entry. I mean, I hope maybe you've solved that. I don't know. There was one convention coordinator in between us, and I think Alex was big on automation. So I think maybe you don't have as much data entry as I'd had to do back in the day. But yeah. So what has that like been like so far to like step up to that the leadership team and take that role on and have those responsibilities thrust upon you?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a lot, but not in a bad way.
Mm.
I knew what I was signing up for when I was like, "Hey, I want to be convention coordinator." And they went, "All right, we'll put you on the docket for election." And then nobody else ran. And I went, "Okay, I
Uh,
guess I'm the convention coordinator now."
I
Um,
when I won, I was also unopposed. It is not
yeah,
the most popular job in the network.
yeah. No, and like working it, I can see why, because it does take a lot. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot more than like it's a lot more work than people think it would be. Even as a volunteer position, it's a lot. But like I'm a project coordinator as my day job,
Hmm.
and I get my day job done in like a few hours every day, and then I make sure I'm on for meetings and like, but like that's all the convention coordinating is it's coordinating people and things and scheduling events and making Google forms and stuff. And like it's just this it's my bread and butter in terms of like my non-creative stuff that I'm good at. So
Nice.
like I, you know, I'm really excited. I hope Gen Con goes well this year. And, there have been a few hiccups already, but like it's mostly been like fine. So I think I'm doing something right. And then hopefully, um, but like it's been, I don't know, it's been a very nice because, the leadership team that, okay, the leadership team, sorry, I don't know if you heard her.
It's
Um,
fine. I love cats. Like bring on
I
the cats.
you will love cats too, audience. But no, the leadership team that I'm on with are they're also nice and like they really encourage me to not to one, not take anybody's shit, which is great,
Mm,
and two, like just do the best that I can, which and like not worry about it if I can't do more than that. And so, a Gen Con, this Gen Con cycle's been a bit hectic, mostly because I got top surgery recently, so I've been dealing
mm.
with that on top of Gen Con planning. But like yeah, so and I have a Kickstarter coming up. I love to do this to myself. March is gonna be awful. It's fine.
Right.
But like
You did do it all. You did it all to yourself.
I did. It's
Al-
you know what? And I accept my fate.
Also,
Um,
congratulations on your surgery.
Thank you. But yeah, no, like it's just it is I'm really excited to see what we can do. I'm also like facilitating and like helping run the Indie Groundbreaker Awards
Hmm.
for the 2024 cycle. I may pass it off for the 2025 cycle, which will start up in a few months from now. Um, but I really want to make sure because we kind of dropped the ball on the last 20 on the 2023 ones.
There's
And
there's
I
so many things to so many balls to juggle.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of balls to juggle, and I want to make sure that like we get that done, and I want to make sure that like Gen Con goes smoothly. I want to make sure that like I feel like there's the IGDN offers a lot to its members, and I think, but like only so much as the people running those benefits can manage them.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I feel like this sense of responsibility now that I'm in this position. I'm like, well, people don't pay $100 a year to be in this organization, so I'll sit on my butt. Like, I gotta do stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm doing stuff, and I some days I can do more than others, but isn't that true of all of us? So, I'm
Well,
really excited
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
enjoying it so far.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you are enjoying it. I think it is a when I was doing it, I found it to be both a lot and also largely rewarding, like to
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah, yeah.
accomplished the things and I had to talk to so many people. So then like all of those people are like in my Rolodex, which is a thing that no, I
Oh
don't
my
actually
gosh,
have
you
a
still
Rolodex.
have a Oh,
No,
okay.
I don't
I was like, do you
actually have a
actually have
Rolodex,
one?
but I call it that. My like list of email contacts is what it is, right? All of those
Mm-hmm.
people that I had to talk to. And so it was a period of growth for me as a person and also as a like in the industry, right? Because now I've talked to all of these people to organize these events and who I know the product is not all in a warehouse in Indiana the way it was when I took over and it
Well, it's in a
is
warehouse near Alex now.
yeah,
Um,
I think it's in a warehouse, a smaller warehouse in Chicago, I think is where it is now.
yeah.
Um, but like I made a lot of trips to the warehouse and had to sort through stuff and was like, whose book is this? Is this person even in the network anymore? So there was a lot of like um meeting people through that way of trying to like find out whose stuff this was. So anyway, it was rewarding. I ended up talking about myself more than I wanted to, but it is like I'm only trying to confirm what you're saying about like feeling the both the pressure and the ultimately it feels good to do it and to have it done and to be part of the network in that way. Is there any particular goal that you have in your term? Like, is it like when again, this isn't about me, but like my goal when I was there was to just keep it going because it was
Yeah.
2021 and 2022 after the cons were so much smaller because of post-pandemic and stuff like that. So that was my only goal was to just keep doing it. And
Yeah.
but you're in a
Yeah.
different position. So like, do you have like what do you hope to do, with the
Um,
position?
I mean, like, keep it going is the goal number one
Yeah, yeah,
still.
yeah.
But like, I think it's most of my stuff is back end, like streamline the process so that the person after me has an easier time of it.
Hmm.
Um, and so, because like I think convention coordinator is one of those positions that's like really important to stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's more important than people think it is. And I'm like, oh, this is a lot of responsibility. And so like that kind of got me panicking early on. And then I was like, just treat it like your day job a little bit. Not spend that amount of time, but like
Yeah.
treat it in that way, the same tasks, the same things. And so like it's just thinking about it in terms of, okay, I just got to do XYZ today. And then,
Mm.
but also trying to make Z a thing to help with longevity.
Yeah.
Uh, and like, I just on the back end, because like, just keeping it going on the, like, in terms of like the benefits we give to members, showing up at Gen Con and selling a crap ton, doing all those basic things. That's that's all I need on the front end. Back end, I want to know that it's going to be okay once I'm no longer convention coordinator.
Yeah.
And, it's probably too early to start thinking about that. I don't care. I'm doing it anyway. So yeah.
All right. Well, it's great. I wish you every success in your term as commission coordinator. And again, thank you for doing it because it is sort of the being physically present at conventions is such a benefit for the
Yeah.
membership. And somebody has to be the person who is answering those emails about and signing up to pay the booth fees and all
Yep,
that
yep,
stuff.
yep.
So again, thank you from as somebody who aged out of, I have my own booths at cons now, so I don't have to do that for the IGN anymore. But there are still so many members who are, that's the primary benefit they get out of being in the IGN is being able to be
Hmm.
at PAX Unplugged and Gen Con, and I think we've gone to Gamehole Con and other places, so.
Hmm.
Uh, all right. Well, again, thank you for that. So we want to talk about unless you have anything else to say about that, I want to talk to you about Extraordinary, right? That's
Yeah,
the name of
yeah.
it. So
Yep.
belonging outside belonging, or is that the system? So
Yep.
that's the one that is you mentioned the original source of it as it's another SRD, but it is you mentioned some of the mechanics about it already earlier in this interview, and they're intriguing to me. I don't know how that works. So
Yeah.
is it like game clocks you talked about writing stuff on the card and putting tokens on it? Is there a lot of that, or is that like the
That's
central
more,
mechanic, or like how does what is the game about, and then how does it work? I guess is the two
yeah.
questions that I should ask. And then
So
how
the,
do people get
yeah.
it is the third one we'll ask.
Yes, yeah. The marketing question. Huh.
Hmm.
But so the game is about kids with extraordinary powers on the run from danger in the ordinary world. It is based off of like Maximum Ride, Percy Jackson, Animorphs, though I haven't read any Animorphs.
Sometimes knowing about the idea of it and not knowing it
Yeah,
is all you
a
need.
lot of a lot of people have been like, "Yeah, this is so Animorphs coded," and I'm like, I'll take your word for it. Like 20 people have told me that, so I assume that they're not all lying to me. Um, but yeah, it's the central mechanic is this token exchange system. So belonging outside belonging is based off of PBTA. It's like the first BOB games were Dream Askew and Dream Apart. Dream Askew is like direct line from Apocalypse World. It's literally a queer reimagining of a post-apocalypse. And then the main mechanic there is instead of rolling dice, you're earning or spending tokens. Technically, you're only earning or spending one token per move in like the original games. In my game, I changed it so that you're earning or spending between one and three tokens. And so
Up the
relative,
stakes.
yeah. So like one token is like low stakes, two is like average, middle stakes, and then three is like big stakes.
Hmm.
And if you're earning tokens, it's like you're causing conflict, or like maybe not your character necessarily, but you're in the story causing conflict. Like, um, whether you earn or spend tokens, you can punch an FBI agent in the face. But if you're earning tokens, maybe your finger breaks or you just make him
Hmm.
angry or something. But if you're spending tokens, you hurt him or knock him out cold or steal his gun or something like that. It's
Okay, so
um
very loosely, it's like you spend them to get done what you want to do, and you take
yes.
them to suffer consequences instead.
Yes. It's literally like when you want to invite someone else to inflict consequences on you, you earn tokens, but you
Hmm.
can't like take control of the narrative in the exact way you want unless you spend tokens. Um,
Is most of those
yeah.
spending like, are you spending with other players? Are there, or is it like with a pool that and I assume
Uh,
there's a narrator, game master sort of
there
situation,
is
or
not. It
Sarah
is
master of
actually
ceremonies.
there it is
Yeah.
actually you can play with a game master, but it is GM full,
Okay.
or GM list, but I call it GM full
Yeah,
because
yeah.
every player has narrative control over the story. So, every player is going to have their own kid character, which is
Hmm.
represented with a playbook. And that's one of the sheets that you have. And then the table has six other sheets that are called aspects. And the aspects
Mm.
are kind of like whenever you want to be the momentary GM of like a scene or a moment or whatever, you pick up one of those aspect sheets, and now suddenly you're kind of like the person narrating. The people narrating, tokens are never being earned or spent through aspects, only through kids. So what happens is like whenever you do something narratively significant, you're earning or spending tokens. And then depending on whether you're earning or spending, what you're doing in game, and how many you're earning or spending, the person holding the aspect reacts to that. The reaction can be, yeah, you successfully do what you say you do. The reaction can also be, oh, so you punch this FBI agent in the face, you break your hand because you earned three tokens, and he manages to grab you and twist your arm behind your back and has caught you. Like, it's very, very narrative. And so, you know,
What are some of the example aspects? Is it just like this is a haunted house, or this is
oh, no, no,
a
no.
squad car full of people, or is this like now we have to get on a train? Like are they
The aspects are broad like story elements. So like the six aspects are the ordinary, which represents the ordinary world, the
okay?
extraordinary, which it represents like the magic system, whatever makes the kids special,
Yeah,
the danger, which is the thing chasing the kids that wants to hurt or capture or even kill them, depending on how serious you want to go. The need, which represents like their kids who need to take care of themselves on the run. They might be homeless. They still need to eat and sleep
right,
and be
right.
clean and stuff. The system, which in modern day settings would best represent like cops, schools, social services. And then the design, which is kind of like an element of the extraordinary that like specifically has motivations for the kids. So it could be like fate. It could
Yeah,
be
yeah,
the gods. I've played a game where it was all the kids were genetically enhanced by this corporation, and the design was the pharmaceutical company that had genetically modified their genomes. So like it had designs
yeah,
for the
yeah, yeah.
kids. Um,
So that's like
and
it's not as openly sinister necessarily. Like what I like about
it
all of these
has
things
it
is
like yeah. Yeah.
there's depending on the moment that you play them, it's like they could be sinister or beneficial or
Hmm.
sort of trying to accomplish their own goals, and you're
Yes.
just a pawn to them. They're not
Yes.
openly hostile to you nor beneficial to you. You're just a thing that's here. And all six of those could be that way at any one moment, it sounds like, which
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
pretty interesting narratively. So the setting then, is there a default setting, or is it always those themes of like, because you've talked about different possibilities, so it's not going back to the Americana thing, it is not set like you're not playing 13-year-olds who have escaped from an FBI-like agency who are in North
That's
America
the
in the
yeah.
1990s, and
That's the pretty standard like that is the pretty standard like what I assume, but I do like the aesthetic options on each aspect definitely lean towards that. But, I've played games where we just did a full high fantasy version of it, and it still works as long as the core is like, as long as each of those six elements or six aspects exists. So like we played it where we were in high fantasy, so that was our ordinary. Our extraordinary was like specifically magic and dragons. And then danger was like the witch hunters, and then the need was this, we're hungry, we're
Yeah, yeah.
cold, we're tired.
Basic.
System was like city guards, guards of the kingdom, and then design was dragon the dragon gods and stuff like that. And so like it's just the core of it is about like being a kid on the run. You don't have anyone taking care of you. People want to hurt you. And you find community and hope amongst the other kids at your side is like the core of it. Um, yeah, and there's 15 playbooks because apparently I'm insane.
That's a
Like,
lot. That's a
that's
lot.
so many. Why did I do
Uh,
this to myself? Anyway.
that's the theme of this interview. You've done everything to
Yeah,
yourself. Um, uh, so is there like a robust session zero sort of scaffolding where people go
yes.
through and set up all of these things for their game in
Oh yeah.
particular?
Oh yeah.
Or
Hmm.
okay. Or
No,
does the book
the
also come with, or instead, or in addition, does it come with like, but if you don't want to do that, here's like the list of
mhm.
things like for this setting, like
Yeah, yeah.
play in Riordan's choice. Here it is. Like set these
Yeah.
things as it is and just do that, you know.
Yeah, yeah, both. You
Okay.
can either have like a really robust session zero where you create the world and the characters and everything together at the table, or you can use, I'm calling them backdrops, where
Okay.
you can either use just the setting, you can use the setting and the characters. Each backdrop has like, overview of each aspect, six different characters. Each character has like two playbook options. Um, because the playbooks are very much about like the story of that character, their emotional arc, more so
I
than their abilities. And then each one also has
that's
three starting adventures.
that's really neat to have like almost like the way that when you play like a if you've ever done like a murder mystery dinner type thing or whatever where you get
Hmm.
your like one page character sheet or whatever about like this is who you are and what your motivations are. I love the idea that like and you can play one of these two playbooks to accomplish that. Like it would flavor
Yeah,
the that's a really
it's
neat.
it flavors it differently. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's really neat. Yeah. And with 15 to choose from, I mean there's you can put a
there's
lot of
so
different options
many.
in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, because like, and it's fun to design those backdrops. I've
Hmm.
designed one and a half so far, and I have a third planned if I hit a certain stretch goal in the Kickstarter, which
Nice.
marketing, yay, we have to
Yeah,
talk about the
well,
Kickstarter.
we do
But
have to
like,
talk
yeah,
about it.
it's we do. I could go on about this game forever.
Well, I appreciate your enthusiasm. I mean, it sounds like a very big game,
Hmm.
in like every sense, right? It sounds like it will need a significant page count in order to cover all this stuff. It sounds like it will need,
Hmm.
obviously it's taken a lot of thought on your part and to develop the different playbooks and set up the different rules and stuff like that. And if nobody's played one of the other belonging games, you have to explain the rules as well, like
Hmm.
and then if it's tokens and stuff, then like now you're into like super stretch goals where it comes with like custom tokens or whatever, like
Yep.
you know, um is that one of the things that you've set up on the Kickstarter? Like tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter because am I correct that this is your first go round with crowdfunding?
Yes.
Like,
This is my first Kickstarter. I am asking for $20,000
ooh,
to make this
that's a
game.
good
Um,
size ask. I
it's a
mean,
good
that's
size.
yeah.
Most, at least, like, I think about a third of it is going towards finishing the artwork.
Hmm.
Because I have one specific artist, her name's Stella Langecker, who she did all the artwork that already exists for the game is she did it. I put a lot, I had savings saved up and I used that to get the artwork for it. And I I have a really clear artistic vision for this game specifically. Like other games, I probably would just like pitch to, I don't know, Evil Hat or Hunters and be like, "Hi, would you like this game?" But this game, I feel a lot of ownership over, so I want to
Hmm.
kickstart it myself.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, like, a third of that is going towards the artwork, even possibly like yeah, a third. And then the rest of it is going towards like printing, proofreading, fulfillment, etc. Because
Those are all the things. I mean, those are all
yeah,
things you have to do.
I
Yeah.
really want to have like a physical hard copy of it. Like I
Hmm.
really, like it's something I really want for myself, and I really want other people who want the game to have that. And and so the stretch goals are all, it's going to be black and white interior but full color cover unless we hit 40,000, which if we do, holy crap.
Yeah, that'd be
Um,
amazing.
40,000 is full color interior and artwork. So like all of the playbooks will have colored artwork. All of like the like everything will all the aspects will have colored artwork. The inside of the book will have colored artwork. And then 60,000 is custom tokens. But in between those two, I have more stretch goals, and those are all like other game designers, like people I know, friends I've made that are designing backdrops for the game.
Hmm.
And
Neat.
so, I have the two that are going to come with the game baseline. And then at 40,000, I'll add a third one. But at, I think, what is it? 25, 30, and 35, and then 45, 50, and 55. We're going to have, um, we're going to have backdrops designed by Sam Dunawald, Sasha Renault, who made Spindle Wheel, uh oh gosh, Jason Mills, who's on Happy Jacks and designed Demigods, Kimmy Hughes, also on Happy Jacks, designed Decuma and launched and did Starscape, and then Takuma Okada, who did Stew Pot, and then Doug Lewandowski, who did Kids on Bikes. And
Excellent.
so uh so that's those will be the stretch goals, and that'll be really exciting.
Yeah.
um yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's a fantastic list of designers and hopefully you get to collaborate with all of them on this game. And yeah, I will, to the extent that this video is a source of promotion, I'm happy to get people that are watching this video to come check out this game because that everything you've said sounds very great. It sounds great. It sounds like a
yeah.
really powerful storytelling engine with a lot of really interesting choices to be made,
Hmm.
and it works in a very interesting way with the like. Do you know Graham Gentz and his Under the Autumn Strangely
Yes,
that
yes,
he
yes, yes.
did? So like
Yeah.
that sort of like somebody has to be the wilderness, the
Yeah, yeah,
Arcadian,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
and that it seems similar in that like, but not exactly the same, but similar in that
It's a
like
very meta game. Like you have to be able to hold both your character and yourself as a narrator in your head at the same
right,
time while
but
playing.
but the
If
option.
it's GM full.
Yeah, but the option to like, I think what really would be the next interesting story choice would be if something happens with
Yes.
the odd. So like I'm gonna pick that up and like push my character sheet to the side and like now I'm making this happen because that would be the next interesting story choice. That
Hmm.
and the changing of tokens and stuff like that again, similar to Graham's design. But anyway, uh, that all sounds very so interesting about like if you've got the right player group to play that, and clearly there are like we've been talking about this whole thing. There's this whole world of these kind of games. So I think
Hmm.
the players are there. So hopefully the
Yeah.
campaign will also will be there. Will the players will come to the campaign,
Yeah.
and support
Yeah.
it because it's very interesting everything you said.
Psychic
Uh
Kids was one of the inspirational games for my game. I will not lie. It
yeah.
was fun. I've played Psychic Kids. It's great. It's fun. Ugh.
Yeah, Michael's original game is just so we talked about at the very beginning we talked about the 24 word or 20 it was 24
Yeah, yeah,
word
yeah.
RPG. So like
Hmm.
Psychic Kids started as a 200 word RPG, and it was just the card draw stuff, and then
Oh, that's so cool.
that was it. That was only the game. It's like it was called Psychic Kids on the Run from Danger or Psychic Children. It was called Psychic Children on the Run from Danger. You can still find it on the 200 word RPG challenge website. And we were like, this is so great. Just add our dice rolling mechanics to it and obviously spend more than 200 words, but it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, it was that dice not the dice, the card
The
mechanic of
card
like
mechanic is super cool.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that was the reason why we got in touch with him to make more of the game because that was such an interesting idea. But the to make it all narrative the way that you've done it is such an also an interesting idea, and the stakes, um, Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I wish you every success, and I hope you see this. I hope you see your campaign succeed. That would be fantastic. And is there any other thing you want to tell us about that, or anything else you want to tell us? Because I think I think we've talked
Yeah,
for or we've talked for a while. We could talk
we
more
have.
clearly, but that's fine. I think we should wrap it up. But
Yeah.
anything else you want to say about the campaign or about the game in general before we wrap this up?
Just that it's launching on Kickstarter on
Mm,
March 10th. I don't know when
March
this is
10th.
coming out, but March
Uh,
10th, 2025.
I think this is
Yeah,
scheduled to
that's
be out along like the 19th or so, so it should be
hey,
live when
go
this is out.
back it. Go
It'll
back
be
it
live
now.
the campaign should be live when this is out, so you can back it right now if you've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Cody,
Thank you so
thank you
much for
again.
having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me for this time and sharing, your history of games and I've enjoyed your enthusiasm for design and ideas and storytelling and stuff like that. So it's been a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you.
And for all of you who've watched the video, first of all, go back this game, Extraordinary, Belonging Outside of Belonging game. And also in the comments to this video, why don't you put in some of what backdrop would you like to play this game in? Put some ideas in
Give me
there,
ideas.
so that like, Doug can go and read the comments and see what he's going to write about. All right. Thank you for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.